everybody. Can you hear me all right? Well, thanks for coming out. My name is Tyler Yount. I'm the Civic Engagement Coordinator for the City of Chattanooga. And I'm going to talk about our Chattanooga Civic User Testing Group today. I'm glad I came out on a cold day, so everybody's trapped. You can't escape my presentation. Let's get started. So, a lot of you are probably familiar with the term UX. It stands for user experience. But I wanted to go over just some background on it before we got started so everybody's on the same page. So, everybody kind of defines UX differently, but really the broadest definition of it is the what, when, why, and how somebody uses a product or a service. People who are UX professionals really focus on making that possible for a customer. But why do we need it? Well, it's kind of the classic example of like an ivory tower of people making big decisions and then they don't see what's happening on the ground level. So CEOs and boards are concerned about their profits. Marketing teams are concerned about getting people to buy or use their product. And then the developers and engineers are just trying to make the thing work. But there's really an empty hole that we kind of found where there's nobody that's concerned about the people, what happens when people are actually using the product or the service. So UX professionals kind of filled in that void and started thinking about how do we make that experience better. So it started out in the business world, naturally. CEOs kind of started to see this gap and took notice when they saw that people were having good user experiences. I'm going to steal an example from Jared Spool, who was here a while back, about one of the best examples of this. So think about when you walk into an Apple store. Everything about your experience that you have in the Apple store has been carefully chosen to be that way. And the result is people love going to the Apple store. Every time they go to the mall, that's the first store that they want to stop by. It's fun, it's easy to use all the things there. The geniuses are always friendly and helpful. And the reason that's the case is because they have UX people who designed it that way. So other people started to take notice of things like this, and they said, hey, we need to start thinking about UX too. And then, naturally, a lot of times, government lags behind the business world. And that's just because, the government world is a lot less competitive, typically. We're not profit-focused, but we try to be service-driven, which is what we'll talk about in a minute. So we're trying to really provide the best quality services that we can provide to our citizens, even though we don't always make it there. The White House kind of took notice of all the things that were going on in the UX world, and they actually started their own UX team. They have a team of people who they brought in from the private sector that are working with federal agencies to bring UX to government. They wrote this playbook. It's a digital services playbook. And I wanted to go over this with you because there's some really good stuff in here, especially when we think of government. And I know not everybody in here really works in government, so I wanted to kind of give you guys a snapshot of the things that we think about. I have all of them up there, and you can go to playbook.cio.gov to read the entire thing. It's really easy to read. Number one up there is that we need to understand what people need. We need to start thinking of digital projects by thinking of the needs of the user first for the service, rather than just thinking of, oh, it would be cool if we had this service. Will people use it? We don't know. The next thing is we need to make sure that we address the whole experience from start to finish. So we have to build our digital services with the understanding of the different ways that people interact with it. A lot of times in government, we would focus on one way. You go to the website, and that's a way that you do it. You come into City Hall, and that's the way that you get the service. But we need to be thinking about making a continuum of actions that you can take to get that service, like go online, go to a mobile application, call somebody, or go in person if you want. The next thing is it needs to be simple and intuitive. This is a big one. Government shouldn't be stressful. It shouldn't be confusing or daunting. Government services should be simple and intuitive Going to City Hall should be like going to the Apple Store, basically. Build the services using agile and iterative practices. So this is common in the tech and developer world, right? But it's not so common in government. But really, if we focus on incremental, fast-paced style of software development or service development that gets that service or that software in the hands of the citizen quickest, and then we're focusing on incremental changes, that's best for the citizen. The rest of these aren't as important, so I won't go over them. But I really do encourage you to go look on that, especially if you work in government, have an interest in government. It's pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to talk a little bit about an organization called Smart Chicago. They started in the mid-2000s, and they're really, right now, and they were, the leader in a civic group that's focused on tech solutions to civic problems. So they're funded similar to the way Open Chattanooga is funded. It's a collaboration between the city, local foundations, and the community. And they focused at first on civic hacking. We have Chattanooga, and they started with hackathons. People coming together, starting to hack on civic data, turn that into civic innovation. But what they realized is, hey, we should probably be focused on making sure that what we're developing is useful to citizens that we're trying to develop it for. So they started the first CUT group. That stands for Civic User Testing Group. They paid people $5 to sign up and fill out a survey about how they use devices, their basic demographics, and then they invited people every month to come out and test the civic app that their developers have made. Each time somebody comes out to test and they complete it, they get a $20 Visa gift card. What they found was real citizens were not only improving their apps, but they were also learning about civic technology while they were doing the testing. It was a great way to kind of spread the word about their app and make awareness of it, and also teach people who might not always be in a testing group how to use some different technologies. So here's how our local CUT group got started. You might know these guys. I think one of them's in the room somewhere. The Code for America fellows came to town. And they were working with Open Chattanooga, trying to grow our open data infrastructure. And they said, hey, you should check out Smart Chicago and the things that they're doing. There's a cool thing they do called Civic User Testing Group. So we got in touch with this guy down here. His name's Dan O'Neill, and he's awesome. You should get to know him and what he does. He's really the leader of open data, civic hacking in the country. This is actually a picture of him at the White House. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's pretty cool. He basically showed us the ropes, kind of turned over the model to how they run their Civic User Testing Group, taught us things about like what kind of software and equipment to use, stuff like that. And then we kind of put together a plan and said, well, that's all good, but how do we think that the Chattanooga CUT group should work? How does that change based on how things are on the ground here versus how they're a little bit more developed in Chicago? So we talked to the Benwood Foundation and said, hey, this is kind of our plan for the CUT group. Are you guys interested in funding this? And they said, yeah, that sounds awesome. It's a good bang for our buck. So we got the money for the gift cards, the equipment, and the software to run it. And then we had our first test at Chattanooga last summer. Some of you were there. And our first app that we tested was Chattism, which is a local app that is a guide to local government. So very simply, our Chattanooga CUT group is a group of residents that get paid to test civic apps. But we thought civic apps can be bigger than just an app that you use on the phone or an app that you go to a website to use. It can also be, a civic interaction. So many interactions that citizens are doing every day with government, especially, we wanted to test these things. Why should we just limit ourselves to technology when we can also test things like forms, things on paper? or a whole experience like coming into City Hall. So we tried to expand the scope of it a little bit and test everything that citizens use every day in their civic life. So what we've been testing is city websites, citizen-built civic apps, of course, but also paper forms that people fill out every day. Why we did this is because, going back to the digital services playbook, things like filling out a permit to open a business shouldn't be a headache. It should be easy to do. We don't want to hinder somebody from starting a business in our city. We want to make it easier to do. And we want to make sure that the experience of doing that is good, and they'll tell other people, opening a business in Chattanooga is easy, you should open a business in Chattanooga too. So we want to kind of do that with this group. And it's been going for about 6 months now, and we've been able to test some really cool things. So this group kind of combines 3 different really important elements. You already heard about UX testing. This is really a growing part of government, and it's also a growing part of our city. Leslie's here from Center. She's training UX professionals right here in Chattanooga, and that's really exciting. So we wanted to highlight that in our city. The next thing is digital skills. I talked before about how Smart Chicago kind of found out that people aren't only testing and helping us, but we're helping them learn some digital skills. So we see this as a chance to enhance people's digital skills and also get people involved that aren't normally involved in digital testing. And that kind of leads us to our next thing, community engagement. So in the Burke administration, some of you know, we're hyper-focused on making sure everything comes back to 5 outcomes: safer streets, stronger neighborhoods, smarter students and stronger families, a growing economy, and high-performing government. So we really see that the CUT group is a way for citizens to get engaged and be a part of those outcomes. Specifically, high-performing government. This is citizens really making our government better hand in hand with city staff. And we think that's really, really cool. So here's what our group looks like. We think it's pretty diverse, but it could be more diverse. And what we're really looking for as we continue to get more and more testers involved is building a representative group of Chattanooga. We want this group to look like Chattanooga, so when somebody's testing a civic app, they're getting a really good representative sample of the city. Our youngest tester is 16, and our oldest tester is 67. So it's pretty diverse by age. It's 26% minority, and this is one that we hope to boost up a lot to match what the city looks like larger. We have 8% Latino population, which is actually a little higher than the census population, so we're pleased with that. We have 55% women, which is right in line with what the city looks like. So we've got a diverse group of testers, and we've learned some pretty cool things through that you might not learn just by doing like a normal user experience test. This is what a test looks like. We actually set up in the 4th floor of the library. We have the software loaded right on it. We use the built-in camera on the iMac to capture the person's face. And when we look at the video, we get to see the person's facial expressions. We get to see where they click and where they're moving their mouse. And then we see all the screen things right kind of layered on top of each other to help see the reaction. It's an app called Silverback that we use, by the way. For forms, we also use a little document cam. So we can see the way that people write on the form, and we use the webcam to see how people are reacting to the form and when they have a puzzled look, that kind of thing. We also recently started testing with city employees too. We thought that was really important. One of the things that we tested was our budgeting forms for the upcoming year. We wanted to make sure that for a citizen that is maybe a part of a nonprofit, that submitting their budget offer to us is easy and makes sense to them. It's not overly complex. And we also wanted to make sure that for city employees, the same thing happened. A lot of times, administrators might say, here's what we are tasked with, we have to fill out all these budgeting forms, but the lower level city staff might not get input into how those forms get changed for the next year, and they might be confused about how that works. So we were seeing kind of a lot of confusion about not getting back from city employees what we expected to get back. So we went back and tested it with city employees and made sure that we were hearing how they were thinking of the form and changed some of the elements. And again, it doesn't always have to be a computer interaction. So this is from another testing session in another city. And it's basically a user that has all the information and content that would go into a website or an app, and they're organizing it the way that makes most sense to them. So it doesn't always have to be them directly testing it. We can also test concepts and make sure that we're getting the design right at the get-go. So now I want to tell you, show you an example of what this would look like. On the left, you see our old permit to operate a hotel. If you come into City Hall, you want to open up a hotel, you fill out a business license first. So we tested that. And then you would fill out this application to operate a hotel. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that we found in testing. They're really small changes, but when you look at the results, you get a better understanding and a more simplified form. So people got confused a little bit on the contact information. I don't know if you can see, but it says contact/manager, contact phone number, and contact email. People are like, well, I don't know who my contact is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be me, my manager, my secretary? Who's that supposed to be? So we wanted to put this right below the initial information on the new form, which is on the right, and kind of explain some context on who that contact should be. So we said this can be the manager or the owner. People also didn't know what the hell this bottom part thing was. Fire marshal inspection, they were like, so am I supposed to take this to the fire marshal and go get inspected after this? Am I supposed to not touch it? Somebody going to do something with it later on? Why am I seeing it if I'm not supposed to do anything with it? So we added a little section that said line for fire marshal use only, so that we could still keep the element attached to the form and we're not dealing with two separate papers. And clarify a little bit about what the inspection is entailed. So it talks about the fee for inspection, and the first inspection has no charge. And then it has like fine print for the rest of the stuff that's not really relevant. Another thing we did is we created standard formatting for all the forms. So a lot of times different regulations are passed at different times. Different ordinances are passed by city council at different times. And the result that we were seeing was we would have one application that was made 5 years ago that looked completely different than the application we made yesterday. So we tried to format all the forms in this way. So each one has the same heading now, where the city seal is at the same place, the city treasurer's info is at the same place. You always know the fees in the top right-hand corner, and the heading is always similar size and always in the similar place. And what the result is when you look at a form for people who are opening businesses often, they know exactly where to look now, no matter what the business type is. So these are just really small changes, but it makes a big difference. Just from like 3 testing sessions, we were able to find all of these insights and do a small formatting change. And it made a big difference for the treasurer's office and the time that their staff was spending helping people through the form. The information that they're getting back now is more accurate because people understand what they need to put. So we hope to do this more and more with more and more city forms. So if you think this is cool and you want to get involved, there's ways that you can get involved at all the different types of levels of it. Like I said, we really see this as a way that citizens can work hand in hand with government to make our government better. So you can actually run a test if you want. We'll train you on how to be a testing facilitator. We can train you on how to write a testing plan and what that would look like, and how to write testing reports. So you're welcome to do that. You don't have to do every test, run every test, but you can just come out and run one test, just as like a professional development thing, or if you think UX sounds interesting to you. You can also become a tester. So again, we pay you $5 to sign up and just tell us a bunch of probing information about how you use devices. And then we'll pay you when you come out and complete the test too. You can also test something. A lot of you are developers in the room, and I hope that you'll make Civic apps in the future. And once you make that Civic app, or even when you're just in the initial stages of the design, we'd love to test that for you. It's free of charge for you to test it, and we hope that you'll get some really good feedback. You can test again and again too, because like again, we're focused on the iterative process, but we are starting to get a lot of demand for testing now that more and more people know about it. Another thing is, if you don't have something to test, you can still suggest something to test. We love to have your suggestions. If you know of something that is a really bad experience in city government that we can test, we'd love to know. I'm sure you have a boatload of things. Maybe you'll bust out a notebook of things. You've been waiting for this moment. So yeah, these are the ways that you can get involved. And I have a sign-up sheet on the sign-in table right where you came in, and you can just check which things that you're interested in. You can also do all this online. Tester.openchattanooga.com is the website. You can sign up, and you can also submit a test suggestion. And that's it. Thank you, guys. So I do have time for questions if anybody has a question. Yeah.
Do you guys just test things, or do you actually are you involved in creating apps and stuff like that?
The cut group just tests things. We try to work really closely with Open Chattanooga, so whenever they have an idea for an app, we can be there from the get-go. But yeah, we just focus on the testing. Yeah.
If I had a problem with the Civic app or website, what is the best avenue to report that problem?
Well, it depends on the app. A lot of times when we're developing Civic apps, we try to put everything on GitHub. So that's a good avenue to flag an issue there. Sometimes you'll find the contact information for the people who developed it. That's another good way. You can always contact me, and I'll try to find the person. But yeah, one of those three things are usually the best one. Saw a question over here? Yeah.
So once you do the testing on that, what happens to the results of the test? Who receives that, and what results from that?
Well, we review all the recordings of the testing video and write down kind of themes. And then we write up like a testing report that has like suggestions based on what we saw. And that testing report goes back to the people who developed it. So in the case of our permit forms, they would go back to the Treasury office, and then we usually sit down with them face to face and walk them through it and say, this is what we were talking about when we said this. Does that make sense?
And usually the report is well received and acted upon?
Yeah.
Pretty much right then?
Yeah, we've never had a bad response where they're like, we're not going to do any of this.
That's great.
They always say, this is awesome. We wish we knew about this before. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Tyler. At this point, we will be taking a quick break so you guys can go check out the board to see what's coming up in the next set of sessions. So take a moment to review the board, see what sessions you want to participate in, and we're going to run them just like the first set of breakout sessions. When y'all get settled in, find somebody to be a secretary, and then propose the ideas, get to discussion, and let's work on some solutions. Yes, Tim.
Can we add, do people keep proposing sessions if they have other ideas?
Oh, yes. And if you have other ideas that have come up as a result of the discussions that have gone on so far, or just something that's occurred to you that you didn't write down earlier, feel free to continue filling out those cards with your ideas. We ask that you keep like one idea per card. You can fill out multiple cards if you need to. And just bring those up to the front, and we'll add those into the mix. Yes, Sean?
Chief Placer should be here around 2 o'clock.
Okay.
I think Valley Radu too, right?
Yes.
Just to let folks know that they'll be around to join a session.
Sean was letting y'all know that Chief Fletcher will be here from the Chattanooga Police Department around 2 o'clock, so he may be floating around sessions. Feel free to engage him in your discussions. That's what he'll be here for. And also Valerie Radu from the Family Justice Center will also be here with him to address any questions you may have about projects they have going on or ways that you feel they may be able to address issues that you're concerned with today. They'll be here around 2 o'clock and they'll be floating in and out of sessions, and we may have time for the chief to do a brief presentation as well. So go check out the board and we'll reconvene in a few minutes.